Welcome to the St. Matthew's Episcopal Church podcast, coming to you from Northern Virginia. We're so glad you're here. Today, we hope our message inspires you to better know and share God's love. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and join our weekly newsletter, The Friday Flash, to stay updated on all of our events and services. Let's dive in.
Well, today's gospel, in one sense, can seem like a very strange one, because in it we have a person who has dreams, and in these dreams they feel like God is very literally and very specifically communicating with them and telling them exactly what to do. And so what happens next comes in response to this dream they've had and this feeling that God told them specifically to do something in this dream. And while I think that does happen, and today people have been telling me of experiences they've had like that, for most of us, we've never experienced anything like that. I have never experienced anything like that. I have never experienced God come to me in a dream, say, Rob, do this, and then had to go out and do that and have that save my life or something like that. I've never had that experience. So on first reading, this gospel seems a bit bizarre. It seems like it really has little to do with me. But as I look at it closely and I draw the lens back a little bit, I see that actually it's a very human story, and that it is your story and it's mine. And the questions it asks are questions that are absolutely key to a life well lived. So at its heart, on the most general level, this story is the story of a person who simply wants to do the right thing. That's the story. A person who wants to do the right thing. And the context of that story are times that are uncertain, times that give people reasons to be afraid, and times that are politically charged. In the course of these few verses, there are two different leaders. These leaders have great impact on the nature of the world and the lives of the people in that world. They certainly have the potential to have great impact on Joseph and Mary and Jesus' life. And so it's in this context of an uncertain world, a world that can be a world that causes people to be afraid, and a world in which it's politically charged, that Joseph has to figure out what the right thing to do is. Can anybody relate to that? I imagine we all can. And so today what we're going to look at, based on this story, is we're going to look at what does it mean to do the right thing. And then how do we do it? And so the first thing I think that we need to do is we need to figure out which of these markers actually work, because I kind of lost track of them. But the first thing is to figure out who gets to define what the right thing is. And here we basically have three choices. So who's going to define what the right thing? It's either going to be the world around us, it's going to be us, our heart, or it's going to be God. So when we're thinking about what's right, is it the world that tells us what's right, and therefore we're always chasing what the world tells us a life should look like? Are we looking into our own hearts and saying, okay, what do I believe a life well lived looks like? Or am I looking to God and saying, God, what would you have me do, and then respond to that? And perhaps is it possible that over time these two come together? That if I walk by faith with God throughout my life, I come to want what God wants, and these two become the same thing. And I personally have experienced some of that, but I've also experienced these two being very different as well. And then the next thing in this that we need to decide is we need to decide whether the right thing is an outcome. So to here, it's whether it's an outcome, and I'll say more about the difference, or whether it's a process. So Joseph has got to decide who he's going to listen to. He listens to God in a way different than most of us listen to God. Let's not let that get in our way. Let's just say that he found a way that worked for him to listen to God, just like there are ways, time-honored ways, for us to listen to God. And the next step is to discern whether the right thing is to keep Jesus safe, the outcome. That's the measure of success. That's what will determine whether what he did was right or not, if he can keep Jesus safe. Or was the right thing simply a process? He can't keep Jesus safe. That's up to God. He's just got to take the next step. That's the process. That's the journey. There's a world of difference between these two. Between saying, I have to guarantee the outcome, or that I simply have to take the next step. I have to engage in the process of going in the direction to which God is calling me. A world of difference between these two. And a huge part of my life, I haven't seen that difference. And so I focused on this rather than this. And when I've done that, I've gotten extremely frustrated and sometimes downright depressed. Here's a story that perhaps will help us think more deeply about these things and see the challenge in them and also the importance of getting them right. So imagine for a moment that you have an IQ of about 72. And just for the record, in the top 10 things that are important in life, I'm not sure I'd be even put in IQ in the top 10 things. All right? So I'm not saying anything about one's actual IQ. But in this area, this is what's called a super zip. So this is an area of actually inflated IQs. The average IQ in this room could be as high as 130. Might be higher than that. By definition, the average IQ is 100. But this is an area where we're not satisfied with ordinary. And so 72 is going to be significantly below that. And we just took a test, all right? So you take this test, and on this test, there's 100 questions on it, so you get 72 right. Now, if you get 72 right, if your measure is the outcome, you did really poorly. You did really poorly. And if you're measuring it in relation to the world, well, you did even worse still. Right? And this, as you know, this is a lot of my story, is looking at the biggest and what I consider the best churches and thinking, so letting them establish my measures, thinking that their measures need to be my measures, and failing pitifully in approaching them. And that being just a source of incredible grief and stress in my life. And so in that, or what we can say, so we either say the world says we got to be here and I'm down here, so I stink. Or it's saying that the outcome is what matters. How well I do on the test, I didn't do well, so I stink. Or it's saying what really matters is the process, that I took the test in the first place, that I stepped up to the plate, that I took the test in the first place, and what sets the standard is just simply doing my very best. And for those of us for whom God is an important piece, being good stewards of the gifts that God has given us. By that measure, the person who took the test with an IQ of 72 and get 72 hit the ball out of the park, didn't they? They hit the ball way out of the park. So it's super important that we think about who defines what the right thing looks like and how we define that, because one path is the road to grief and misery, and the other path is the road to fulfillment and meaning. So that's the first. Second is going to be words that might describe what the right thing looks like. And I'm just going to rapid fire give you some words that are very different. And this was last week's sermon. And if you didn't hear it, you might go back and listen to it. It's about how we need to know where we're going. Because if we don't know where we're going, then we never get there, and that's the surest recipe I know for a life of regret. So when we're clear about where we're going, then we can actually get there. And so this is thinking about the right thing is, if we're clear about what the right thing is. And in the end, only you get to define that. I mean, God gets ultimately to define that, but it's up to you whether or not you listen to God. So it comes down to you. Words, first word, the success, mean moving really fast. Always going 110 miles per hour. And you know that historically that's how I like life. Or is success really measured by going slow? When you go fast, man, it might seem like you're accomplishing lots of stuff, but you're breaking lots of things. If you go slow, you're able to be more methodical and just really discern what's right. And you might not accomplish as much, but you don't hurt as many people in the process. So, which of these two is the most important? And that's really up to you. I mean, I can see value in both. And another question is, does this change over time? When I was young, without hesitation, I would have said fast. Where I am now in life, I say without hesitation, slow. Because it's never worth hurting somebody. Second one would be, and this is a fascinating one. And some of you who are used to high performance, and that's sort of my life goal. I just read this one recently. I don't know why I never thought about this. This one just stopped me dead in my tracks. It's whether a life well lived, the right thing is always being out on the edge, always being out in the front, which is a very lonely place to be. You know, if you're exceptional, that by definition means we've left most people behind. If you're best in the world, it means you've left everybody behind. And the closer you get to that, the lonelier it is. So that's life out on the edge, right? That's life lived, and that's where I've always wanted to be, out on the edge. It's been so important to me. But and this is why it stopped me in the track. And it never even occurred to me that there was another good way to be in the world, another way of pursuing high performance, and that is to be centered. And can you see the world of difference between those two? What a tremendous difference between living life on the edge and being centered. Because this forces us to be alone. And, at times and stations of our life, that might be what God's calling us to be. This calls us to be in deep relationship. And it's a very different positioning in life, whether we want to be out at the edge or we want to be centered. If you're pursuing this, you probably don't have time for Sunday morning. And most people in this area don't. You got to get ahead. You have so much you need to do. And so, I mean, you can't afford to waste an hour on Sunday morning when you could be doing something different. If this is important to you, then this is where you need to be faithfully week in and week out. Because if you're not, you, like I, will get off course. Right? So, if this is the value, it looks like a very different thing. And then the final one that I would just say, is it about living into our uniqueness, or is it about being faithful? And we live in a day and age, it tells us it's all about, finding, you be you, whatever the heck that means, being, true to that, and which is a very different thing, because again, we look just right in here. Or is it about discerning what God has said to us and being faithful to that? And God says things in a variety of ways. If God has called Linda and I to a relationship together, and being faithful to God means being faithful to my wife. So any situation that comes up in life that calls me to be unfaithful to my wife is, it might call me to be unique. The typical thing of men in midlife, I mean, so typical that you can almost predict it, that, about midlife, for one reason or another, men get bored with being married, and then they think God's calling them to do something different, live into their own, but nobody's ever felt what I'm feeling now, and so I need to do this to pursue my, and I say it in a certain way, but I mean, I've felt that, right? And so the question is in that, do we pursue what feels like God is uniquely calling us to do, or are we faithful? And again, at this point in my life, faithfulness looks like the name of the game, but you got to decide what speaks to you. So this is about defining it. And then the final thing would be, how do we practice it? Practice. Not even hard to spell, but it sort of tripped me up for a minute. And I'd suggest that the way that we practice all these things is through optimism. Now, this is tricky because we live in a day and age where optimism is out of style. And quite literally, there are numbers of people who are saying, like to public speakers or to pastors right now, very specific to people, they'd say when you preach and you teach and so on and so forth, you can't be optimistic anymore. Because the world is because so many people have lost hope when we talk about having hope, that it seems discordant and like we just have our head in our clouds and don't really know what's going on and are not worth listening to. Right? It's one of the reasons that people think the world is no longer relevant to them, because their life is so challenging that when somebody talks about how good life can be, it just feels like, right? So they say, don't even talk about it because you'll lose your audience. But on the other side, you have a guy by the name of Michael Gervais, who probably is the leading expert in the world right now on high performance. Fascinating guy, has done some really great stuff. And one of the things that he says is, without exception, is that high performers, the one quality, the only quality they all have in common, and without exception, is that they're all optimists. That they all believe that what they do can make a difference. That the next step can bring something good, right? That there's reason to take that next step. So bring that to today's gospel. Joseph, God is telling him to go to Egypt and save Jesus and Mary. And does he know that he's going to be a success? Is he certain that he's going to be able to complete that journey? I don't think he is. I mean, I don't think he knows how that's going to end. And somewhere along the line, Joseph stops being present. I mean, not much longer in the story, he drops out, presumably because he dies. And so somebody else has got to walk Jesus to the end. But what Joseph has to do is, even if he's not sure exactly where he's going, he's got to believe that the journey's worth it. That the next step is worth taking. Otherwise, he never takes a step. And so I can imagine him saying something like, I don't really know what this thing is. It's something, but whatever it is, I got to pursue it, right? Because in pursuing it, something good will happen. That's optimism. That's an ability to take that next step, because that next step matters. And without it, what happens is we just get stuck and we're unable to move. And that ends up being a very grim place to be. And frankly, I think one of the things as adults and even as grandparents that we can do is help young people see where there's good in the world, because we know it's harder and harder for them to see it. And so optimism is actually a skill we learn to practice. If we want to live a good life, it's something we practice. We become what we practice. We become what we repeat. And optimism is one of those things that we can actually learn. It's not a matter of being born optimistic or pessimistic. It's what we've learned, what we've practiced and repeated in our lives. And so, and with this I'm finishing. So hang with me, just a little bit more to go. Two ways we develop the skill of optimism. The one is through actually seeing the good around us and practicing seeing it. So, is the world perfect? No. Are there all kinds of things that are deeply upsetting in the world? Absolutely. Is the world only and through terrible? No. And so maturity is about being able to hold both. It's being able to say, yeah, there's some genuinely bad stuff, but boy, here's something that's just so good, right? And so the way we practice that is say, right here, right now, whatever else is going, whatever else is discouraging you, whatever else is making us afraid, whatever else feels uncertain, what's one thing that's good, right? Somebody told me this morning their dog. Okay, I like that answer, My dog loves me, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And actually what you're supposed to do is find three things. And if you can't find three things, you just find one thing, right? And if you can't find even one thing, ask somebody that you love and you trust. And if there's nobody else, ask me. And let's sit down together and talk. And let's find one thing. And then the other thing is, when we face challenging situations that really are so difficult, is that we look for opportunities in them. Opportunities to, even if we fail to learn a lesson, right? Or an opportunity to reframe it in a way that we grow through it. And so Linda and I, just the last couple of days, it turns out that the water main that drains our entire upstairs sprung a leak. So that means that we can't use anything upstairs, like none of the upstairs bathrooms and none of not the dishwasher, any of the sinks, any of the toilets, any of that sort of stuff. We can't use any of them because we can't. But I'm not willing to pay the price of a plumber and holiday prices or weekend prices. So the soonest the plumber can come is Wednesday of next week. So initially, that really torqued me. It was like, oh my God, But then you think, well, it's a 50-year-old house. These things are going to happen. It's not that God has it out for me and that life's unfair. No, these things happen. I mean, deal with it. But then, Linda and I were talking about, we said, you know what? We love to go camping. So we're just going to pretend we're camping. And so we went down. We don't get to go camping as much as we like to go camping. And so we literally went down in the garage, found our camping gear, brought out the basins we use when we go camping. We wash our dishes, put them in our sinks. And, this morning I got up and I took my mug, the mug I'd take camping, and I filled it with water. I got my toothbrush and toothpaste, went out in the backyard, and brushed my teeth. Didn't do anything else, just brushed my teeth. All right, so brushed my teeth, and while I was brushing my teeth, the sun rose. And did you see the sunrise this morning? Holy cow. I pretended I was in Alaska watching the sunrise, brushing my teeth. And all of a sudden, what looks so bad actually becomes kind of a really cool experience. And doing it with my wife just kind of makes it fun. So, Joseph, he's able to exercise that optimism that says, I don't really know the outcome. I don't really know how far I'll get. I don't really know what's certain or not, but I'm going to take the next step. And I'm going to take the step after that, and I'm going to take the step after that. And in that, proves himself faithful in doing the right thing. Amen.
Thank you for listening. If you're in the Northern Virginia area, we invite you to join us for worship or any of our events. For directions, service times, and information about our online services, visit stmtts.org. That's stmtts.org. Until next time, go in peace and share God's love.